I created my own tier list for Humankind Cultures of Africa DLC, and today we're going to jump in and review all 6 of these brand new cultures that you're seeing on screen. I'm also going to have new gameplay, not ripped from trailers, over top of each one, so you can get a feel for the units and the districts. Without any further ado, my name is JumboPixel. Let's not muck around, let's make sure we've subscribed and liked the video, and move on. First and foremost, in the ancient era, we have Bantu. Bantu are an expansionist culture, so it's important to remember that expansionist cultures are generally stronger these days in humankind. The Bantu provide +2 influence per number of adjacent empires on the territory. So for every neighbor that you have adjacent, you'll receive +2 influence per turn. Larger maps will benefit you, but also your expansionizing can take advantage of this. A reminder that these traits are of course kept for the entire game. Their emblematic district is different. It essentially replaces the outpost, it automatically upgrades, and it receives +10 food on adjacent cities. Essentially, your outposts will provide more food to their cities. They are also fortified. And last but not least, the thing that you've seen a few hints of throughout this description of Bantu, their unique unit. This is a really spicy one. It is essentially, in some ways, a much more powerful Neolithic era unit, in that it's nomadic. So when it fights and finds discoveries, it multiplies. But here's the thing that really gets you. There's 2. Firstly, more curiosities are found, and you'll get better rewards from them. Exact details I don't yet have, but it is in the game text. And secondly, as you just saw me do there, you do need 4 of these units to settle an outpost. You don't settle your outpost with influence, you do it with 4 of these. Next up, after Bantu into the classical era, we have the Garamantes. Very interesting culture, the first of 3 agrarian cultures coming to humankind in the Cultures of Africa DLC pack. Their trait that you keep for the rest of the game gives you, again, influence. Make note of that. +5 influence on the main plaza if the city is growing. You are here incentivized, of course, to make sure that cities keep growing because they'll all give you an additional 5 influence. This is a lot at the start of the game, and of course it sort of becomes less important as the game moves on. Their district, though, will help you keep your cities growing in a big way, and actually, I will show you some gameplay of that in just a second, but firstly we should note, it gives us 3 food, it provides 1 food for rocky fields and stony fields adjacent, and even more powerful than that, it provides +2 food on sterile terrain, not just deserts, but also in the snow as well, as luck would have it. This thing is a powerhouse, and you can place it down like a garrison. It does not need to be built adjacent to an existing district. You can place it anywhere in your territory to really take advantage of that sterile terrain. Their unique unit that you're seeing here is a powerhouse as well. Think the Olmec javelin thrower, but it's on a horse and it can move and fire. What it cannot do, of course, is poison. It doesn't do that. Overall, though, the Garamantes paint a very clear picture, one of influence and huge growth, supported by a pretty powerful unit. Moving on to the medieval era, we have Swahili, the only merchant culture entering humankind as part of this DLC. Swahili, I have a pretty good feeling about them. Their trait, Coastal Haven, provides +10 stability on harbours. That's all harbours, any type of harbour will do. You'll also receive, for the rest of the game, +10 stability per adjacent district. That is, when you build next to a harbour, regular districts will provide +10 stability on harbours. Basically, if you build a campus next to your harbour, it will not cost you any stability because the +10 will negate the -10. This is very strong, and of course, it synergizes very well with their unique harbour district. The Swahili have a wonderful unique harbour district. This bad boy provides insane yields. Take a look at this. 46 food, 33 gold, and some influence because I'm fairly influential, unlike in real life. The point here is this harbour is incredible, and it only becomes better because of that trait, Coastal Haven. My goodness, it is a stability, not just stability neutral, but often ludicrously stability positive district that also nets you a whole load of money towards your era stars and food to keep you growing. Their unique unit allows you to disembark and move much easier, and it shouldn't be understated either during the medieval era. As a quick break in the middle of the tier list rankings here, I wanted to give a huge shout out to a natural wonder. No, a cultural wonder. In this DLC, there are 4 or 5 new natural wonders and 2 cultural wonders. One that you can get from G2G, and then this one. The Great Mosque itself is available as part of the Cultures of Africa DLC pack. What does it do? 20 faith, 20 stability, an additional constructible, and plus 5% fame bonus on the Empire. Sounds good. I wonder if it is, though. Anyway, moving on. In the early modern era, we have Maasai. This is generally a lackluster era in humankind, arguably one of the weaker ones. Can Maasai bring power to what has previously been understated? Well, they're the most simple and straightforward culture to understand. They're an agrarian culture, and their pastoral prowess trait for the rest of the game will give you a minus 25% reduction on population consumption on all cities. What does it mean? Your people will eat less, 25% less to be precise. This is very helpful as cities get large. Their unique district, of course, adds to the fun. At the cost of stability, it receives plus 5 food per adjacent exploitation, and it counts as a farmer's quarter. Really, that one is difficult, and I'm going to draw your attention away from that and more towards their unique unit. The thing about that district is, and you can place it anywhere, is it's only really good if it's extracting adjacent food tiles that are good. If it's not next to foodie tiles, you're netting around 20 food, which may be worse than the harbours you got with Swahili. Important to bear that in mind, but it is a versatile, strong, and well-rounded district nonetheless. Their Maasai Morans are anything but moronic. These units are ranged and implaceable, meaning they receive bonus combat strength against damaged targets, an absolute powerhouse for manual combat battles, and a good movement speed and strength for the era. Next, we have the Ethiopians in the industrial era, one that I'm sure many people have been looking forward to, and a little bit of an odd burger. They are the only militarist culture in the era, and their unique unit, the Gromo Cavalry, does generally live up to this. It is maneuverable, slightly less strong, but a very unique unit, and actually really one that is worthwhile using. Likewise, speaking of unique, the Umba that you just caught a glimpse of there, the unique district, is even more so. It is essentially a garrison that can only be built on mountains. Whew! It is very strong though. Like a normal garrison, it provides some stability. You also receive plus 5 science from it, which is not bad. Maybe even the best garrison in the game if we ignore the Mycenaean unique district. What else does it do though? This is important. It provides plus 1 combat strength in combat for your units in or adjacent to it, so it has a wide area of effect, even wider on the opponent though within 2 tiles. Your enemy units will notice impacts of close combat, i.e. their range will be reduced by, if they are within it, significantly. It's a very powerful district, but only if you can use it for warfare. As you can see, otherwise it can be a little difficult to place. However, if you can buff your garrisons using civics or city infrastructures, and if you've already done that, you're going to have a very good time with the Ethiopians. They're an interesting one, definitely. Most specialized than any other. Finally, we have the Nigerians. Their abundant lands provide plus 2 industry per farmer on cities. This synergizes well with most of the cultures we've already seen. Don't forget, huge focus on food and growth, with the exception of the Ethiopians. Their unique district, the oil refinery, is actually a godsend to humankind, although I'm not sure if this specific district is powerful or not. It provides, at the cost of stability, some pollution and a new deposit of oil, which is automatically exploited for you. This is very powerful because 2 reasons. Firstly, you have control over oil, which you need for your MRAP vehicle. Essentially, this is like the Australians' unique unit, right? Very powerful, fast movement, huge range like the Chinese Guardian, and 64 combat strength. It does require 3 oil, and luckily with the oil refinery, you'll be able to produce some. The downside to the oil refinery is outside of producing that strategic resource, it doesn't offer too much more in terms of yields. One other thing to consider though, if you can choose where your strategic resources are, i.e. wherever you place down this refinery, on a lake or in the ocean or river, whatever, you can then build scientific districts around it, or any other district that benefits from being adjacent to a strategic resource. Something to bear in mind. It does give you control, My question is, does the control come too late in the game to take advantage of the Nigerians' power? I'm not sure. I think maybe there's definitely some considerations here between, say, a very long, endless game and a fast or normal speed game. I think you're going to see very different power levels for the Nigerians depending on how quick you're playing. Now, let's do the tier list rankings. Before I do though, I just really quickly want to mention I do have a link in the description where if you've made it this far in the video, you might be interested in purchasing Humankind. You can do it through my link. I get a little bit of a kickback and you don't pay any extra, so it's kind of a win-win, but honestly, literally no pressure. Let's do the rankings. Bantu. Ancient era. Expansionist. Very powerful. A unique ability. A very unique ability that does sort of force us to use their units to build outposts, but then we can spit them back out again. I think the Bantu are a very powerful, versatile, and an excellent expansionist culture. I'm ranking them at an A tier ranking, in line with the Humankind Cultures of Africa DLC power. Next up, we have the Garamantes, an agrarian culture, and a pretty powerful one at that. Their district is flexible, and I like it. Their unit is strong. It's kind of hard to fault them, really. Their trait, I think, is underpowered after around Era 3. I will be deducting points for that. I consider them weaker than Bantu. I'm going to rank them at a B tier ranking. Next, the Swahili. You may remember them as the ones with stability positive, gold positive, food positive, harbours, and really a wonderful array of other traits. Of course, they are stronger the more harbour, seafaring agrarian cultures you're playing, but don't forget that on any lake or sea you can build at least one harbour. Alongside the Swahili unique one means you're building at least two, and that is more than enough to take advantage of them. Their unit, while not unique, is incredibly powerful at exploring the new world, and in the medieval era that might be something you're interested in doing. I think Swahili could very well be the most powerful culture in this tier list. Of course, a disclaimer and caveat, I've only had access to this for a limited number of time, and it hasn't properly sunk into the public psyche yet, so we may have to revisit in future. However, I am, at this stage, fairly confident to say Swahili are, in line with the start of their name, S tier, best tier. Probably for the Humankind Cultures of Africa DLC. Next up, we have the Maasai, a simple culture, the most simple in the list when you compare them to some of the wild things that the other ones are introducing. They provide reasonable food, a strong unit, and a good trait. Time will tell whether their district in practice is a good foodie district. I think it probably is if it's built along rivers for something like a Harappan start, but for a disjointed or disconnected Garamantes play, or a Swahili play that focuses on the sea, it may be less useful. I think the Maasai are strong enough to place them ahead of the Garamantes, but it's questionable, and honestly for me, they are both B-tier cultures in Humankind Cultures of Africa. Next, of course, in the industrial era, and this is a powerhouse of an era, it's important to remember, we have the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians are the only militarist culture in Humankind's new DLC, which is maybe a strength to them. They don't, in my opinion, at least at this stage, align very well with the rest of the set. And given the limited number of cultures who have truly unique garrisons that could benefit from their +5 science, I consider that you may at the most only have one other in the game, and it was probably earlier on. That means you may not have many other garrisons to take advantage of, except for the innate garrisons you are probably building. I think they're stronger than you think, but when you consider the limitations involved, i.e. their district must be built on mountains, their trait only caters to garrisons, and their unit, while strong, is nothing to write home about, I'm going to place the Ethiopians at a C tier purely because of their specialization. But I think that they could, in the right playthrough, perform at more of a S or A tier. And last but not, or maybe least, the Nigerians. Let's remember that we get them at the very end of the game. This is the final era. Sometimes you don't even get to play through it all before the game ends. Their district provides us with oil, which is fantastic and well needed, but the lack of other yields does leave me wanting more, even with a very basic addition of +2 food or +2 industry. It's not enough. Their trait, likewise, feels a little bit undercooked, especially when you consider some of the powerful science or industrial abilities you can pick up in this era where you need them most. I don't know if a little bit of extra food or industry or what have you on my populations or cities is really going to make that much of a difference. Their unit, however, is an absolute beasting powerhouse, and you shouldn't struggle to build it thanks to your oil. In my experience so far, the Nigerians' only saving grace is their unit, and the fact that they have control over oil. That isn't to be underestimated, but it is niche. It really is. You might not even need it at all, and I win most of my games without it. It is for that reason I'm placing the Nigerians at a C tier, but we will have to wait and see how they play out. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.